You're turned on now.
Thank you.
That's my job.
Everyone should have someone who turns them on. All right, so since I'm speaking, I get to do the thing that I do every time I speak, which is give you a Nana update. There she is. There she is. I know. Look at those piercing blue eyes. She's got them, boy. She can look right down into your... She's something else. She's... James didn't get to go with us when we went last month, but Chris went, Uncle Chris, and he hadn't seen her in a while. And every once in a while, she would stop her playing and she would say, Mommy, Daddy, Issy, Nana, Kiss, no Pop-Pop. No Pop-Pop. She was calling him Pop-Pop this time instead of Papa. No Pop-Pop. So you look at that sweet face, and you think about all those sweet faces that were sitting down here this morning. And we think about the first prayer that we teach them. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul will take. What a heavy burden to lay on a child getting ready to go to sleep. If I should die, am I going to die while I'm sleeping? If I die, and what if God doesn't take my soul? What then? Pretty heavy rap. I don't know how many of you started out with that prayer. But then it kind of went from there on to the asking for things. I really would like to have a new pair of roller skates. I really have my eye on that new red bicycle. Could you please get that for me? Right? And then it proceeds on to things like, oh, please, God, let the little boy in class next to me like me. Or please let me pass this test. Right? And then as we become adults, it becomes still a give me list or a help me with this list, only our worries are much larger and seem much more impactful to our lives. Although, when you're in middle school and you're praying that the little boy in class next to you likes you, that's pretty impactful. That's pretty impactful. So what is prayer then? If it's not a shopping list of things that we put out to God, what is prayer? Well, Myrtle Fillmore says that prayer is the most effective method of renewal and transformation because in prayer we associate with God and not with the problem. And I don't know about you, but most of my life, prayer has been about associating with the problem. Because that's the time that has driven me to my knees to pray, is when there's been a problem, some crisis that I felt like I couldn't handle on my own. Right? So, prayer is more than that. Prayer is this associating with God. We say that meditation is when we listen to God and prayer is when we talk to God. Well, where does God reside? Everywhere. And God resides within. Really? Yeah, really. So, it doesn't matter really how you form your prayers or what you say as long as you're doing it with an intent that you're making that connection with the all that is. That's really what we're doing, right, when we pray? But is there an effective way to pray? There are ways that are more effective than other ways to pray. Okay, so this morning we're going to talk a little bit about how can I make my prayers effective. John 11, 1 through 44 tells the story of Lazarus, and there's some real keys in there about how we should approach prayer. So Lazarus of Bethany and his sisters, Mary and Martha, were good friends of Jesus. And Jesus was far away from Bethany when he was told that Lazarus was ill. So strong was his faith in God that he showed no concern for what others recognized as a terminal condition. In fact, he took his time going to Bethany. By the time he got there, Lazarus had been dead for 4 days. Now that's a terminal condition. Anyone else would have no doubt felt that that was that. There was no reason to pray. There was no, it's over, it's done. But not Jesus. He went to the tomb and he commanded them to take away the stone. And then Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you've heard me, and I know that you always hear me. And then after saying this, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. And indeed, Lazarus did come out. And at this point, Jesus ordered the astonished group to unbind him and let him go. So I think the first thing that this story is showing us, the first step in, or the first clue about how to pray effectively, is to pray believing. Believing. Jesus was so centered in the knowledge that God's will was best for Lazarus that he took his time getting to Bethany. There's no time in spirit, right? Time is a man-made concept. So we don't have to be in a hurry. It's not like as soon as we find out something, we've got to get on this right now. Right now. He took his time. He was so assured of what was God's will for Lazarus. Sometimes we fall into prayers that are not so much believing as they are just a little misguided. So how about the prayer of supplication? I've done this one. Oh God, please, 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 I beg you, I beg you, I beg you, please. Anybody else done that one? And that particular prayer is meant to soften a stern and wrathful God, because we think in terms of a God out there that's very angry, because we have lots of clues that he was very angry in the Old Testament, right? Very angry God. And that if we just beg and we're just, please, then he'll go, okay. He'll soften his stance, okay? And then there's the prayers of flattery. Oh God, you are so wonderful, so good. Grant me this prayer. Right? We think if we suck up, we're kind of appealing to that ego of some vain and arrogant God that if we say really nice things, he'll go, yeah, I kind of like that. Yeah, I think I'll give you that, right? And then there's the contractual prayer, which I've had an apple out of this bag quite a few times in my life. I'll do this if you'll do that. So if you will just get me out of this one last jam, I promise I'll go to church every Sunday. You take care of this, I will be in that church pew every Sunday. And that's where we make God out to be a merchant. Right? It's like he's selling favors to the highest bid, or the prayer that's done the best, or if you will agree to do a really good thing, then I'll grant the prayer. And then finally we have the nagging prayer. It's where we don't think we have God's attention, so we just keep asking over and over and over again. We're like the little kid that's pulling on mom's coattails. Mommy, 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 trying to get the attention. What do you want? So we think we can do that with God. God's just not listening to us. We don't have his attention. So we just have to keep asking and keep nagging. God, 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 God. What do you want? Now we have his attention. So we just keep asking. Doesn't work. Doesn't work. Because all of these kinds of misguided prayers ascribe human qualities to spirit. And these are not so much prayers as they are attempts to manipulate. We can't influence or manipulate God to be more God-like. God already is. peace, love, joy, all of these things that we want, God already is. And we can't ask him to give us more of that because we already have it. We already have it. So God's not a person having these things. God is that. God is the vibration of love, peace, joy. So the second step, he said, in a sense, to become your prayer. What does that mean? Well, he said, take away the stone. That implies that there was some action done. So when you pray for something, you have to do something. You've heard that thing about putting feet to your prayers. You know, it's not saying a prayer and then just sitting by waiting for something to happen. Sometimes you have to put feet to those prayers. We had one of our children used to, he loved, it was not Chris, he loved playing music, and he would write all this wonderful music, and he wanted to be discovered as a musician, but he would sit in his room and play it. And it's like, honey, you do realize that a music producer or somebody's not going to crawl through your window and come find you. You know, you have to put feet to that dream. You have to take action. You have to do something. So Jesus said, take away the stone. So what are the strongest, most effective prayers? They're the prayers when we're doing something along with the action. Thoughts, words, emotions, and actions all being in sync. And when we do this, our life really becomes a 24-hour prayer. When we do this with our thoughts, words, emotions, and actions all being in sync, then our very life becomes a prayer. So if you want to know what you're asking the universe for, just take a tally of your life. Because that's what you're asking for. Living our prayers produces the highest results because everything is in sync. And when our whole life becomes a prayer, every thought, emotion, and act is a message to the universal mind of God as to what we're claiming for ourselves and what we want established in our lives. Take a breath. Charles Fillmore said in The Revealing Word that prayer is the most highly accelerated mind action known. Well, what is the law of mind action? In Unity, we know that that's thoughts held in our mind produce after their kind. So whatever we're thinking about, nurturing, giving our attention to, is what shows up in our life. So what's showing up in your life? That's what you're giving your attention and your energy to. So if there's something showing up in your life that's not working for you, you might want to stop and think about how you're giving attention and energy to that thing. So words are revealing and formative. Our words really tell what it is we're thinking. We can say, I'm praying for my daughter. I'm so concerned about her. And God, I put her in your hands and ask that you take care of her. But then I go with my group of women friends for lunch and I spend 10 minutes talking about how worried I am about my daughter. You know, she's doing this and that, and I'm just so worried about her. And then mom calls on the phone, well, you know, I'm really worried about your granddaughter, this and that. So our words are kind of betraying what we're really thinking, right? Are you praying for health, but continuing to talk about all the things that ail you? Or how bad I feel today, or, So, words are revealing and they're formative. We need to make sure that our words are lining up with what it is that we really want and desire. Henry David Thoreau said, as a single footstep will not make a path on the earth, so a single thought will not make a pathway in the mind. To make a deep physical path, we walk again and again and again. To make a deep mental path, we must think over and over the kind of thoughts we wish to dominate our lives. So it's not just a one shot in our thinking. It's training our minds to think in the way that we want to go. And we have to practice that over and over and over in our minds. So prayer is this law of mind action. And it works in both the negative and in the positive. Because if I want to reinforce positive circumstances, I want positive circumstances to show up in my life, then I have to put positive in. I have to feed and nurture that positive thinking. If I want negative circumstances to be a part of my life, then all I have to do is take in the negative and nurture the negative. So negative in, negative out. Positive in, positive out. How do we do that? One of the ways we do that is with one of the very fundamental things that Unity is built on, affirmative prayer, or the idea of using denials and affirmations. So the highest use of prayer is to announce your intention of opening up to God's will. Because sometimes I think I know what's best for my life. But do I really? How many of you have looked at the long trail behind you and went, boy, I'm glad that prayer didn't come to pass. I'm glad that thing didn't work out. I'm glad I didn't wind up with that person. I thought I knew the best at the time and was praying for certain things, but boy, am I glad. Thanks God for not answering that one, right? So I don't always know what's the best. I'm looking with a limited vision. But God sees all, the whole big broad picture. So when I do my prayers, a really good habit to get into is to say this or something better. Because this is the way I see it right now, and I think this is what's the best for me and what's good for me. But I will take this or something better, right? You can't pray to make God give you your good. You already have that good right now. So this process of prayers and denials and affirmations is what helps us claim our good and get in touch with that good that we already have. We can't affirm something that we don't really have the vibration for and expect very good results. So if I want to have more health in my life, more prosperity in my life, I have to think about those things in a positive way and affirm those things as I'm thinking about them and as I'm learning about them, affirming them and creating a vibration for that. So what happens when things don't exactly support that affirmation? That's when we have to look to truth and not facts, because the facts in our life will tell us one thing, and many times those facts based on our five senses are very much in opposition to what the truth is, right? We'll talk about that more in just a second. So we claim our divine identity moment by moment, choice by choice, and what you know yourself to be in any given moment will determine your approach to prayer. If I wake up and I'm having one of those days where I'm just not feeling connected and everything seems out of sorts, my 24-hour prayer, my daytime prayer, my thoughts are probably going to be a whole lot different than if I wake up and I take that time to make sure that I'm feeling connected and centered and ready to go, right? My whole day will unfold differently. And this is the same, this idea of praying for God's will and this or something better is the same type of prayer that we can use when we're praying for other people, because that comes up a lot. Well, how do I pray for other people? I don't know what their journey is. I don't know what it is they're supposed to go through. Absolutely, I would like to see them healed of X, Y, Z. Absolutely, I would like them to experience abundance and prosperity when they're, living this particular lifestyle. But I don't know what is theirs to experience. Everyone's journey is different. And it takes different experiences for every individual to get them into a place that they need to be to learn the lessons that they need. So my prayers for them are, may they recognize who they really are. May they recognize that they are total health and wellness. May they recognize that they are abundance and prosperity. May they have all they need. May everything unfold to their highest and best. And bless them with this or something better. Right? So step 3, Jesus lifted up his eyes. So prayer sometimes requires us to look up. Oftentimes to look up. We have to see above the problem. Because if we're focused on the problem, we're back to that prayer of focusing on the worries. We have to look above all of that. His senses told him the problem was hopeless. Lazarus was dead. That's a problem. That's pretty hopeless. Have you ever had any situations in your life where it felt like Lazarus was dead? This is hopeless. If I stay focused on that, if I stay focused on that problem, then I become the problem. Because now I'm not able to operate in a place where I can be receptive and open to God showing up however God wants to show up. I think it has to look like this. It has to fit within these parameters. The answer to my prayer has to look like this. When there are multitudes of ways that the answer to that prayer can look. So when I get stuck on it having to look like this, or this is the problem, I get tunnel vision, and I'm cut myself off from all of the potentials that exist for that prayer to be answered. So if you're concentrating on the problem, don't do that, because that's part of the problem. So back to this idea of, well, when the facts in my, when the situations in my life are reflecting certain things to me that are not what I want to show up, how do I stay centered in what it is that I do want in the face of all of that? This is where we have to start making a determination between what's a fact and what's truth. Because facts are what our senses tell us. When we engage in our senses, we get facts. I get the fact that that's a purple chair. I get facts. I get the fact that my bank account says there's only $20 in it. I get the fact that I woke up this morning and my knees tweaked. I get the fact XYZ. But those are all malleable and they change. Facts change. Do you get that? Because I could go to the mailbox and pull out a $200 check and all of a sudden my bank account is different. It can change. When I start looking at truth statements, what is the truth of the situation? The truth of the situation is that God is never changing. Spirit is never changing. Universal law, principle never changes. I can rely on it like clockwork. It will work every time. It is true every time. There's a story of a monastery that had a big gold Buddha. And invaders were coming, and they didn't want this Buddha to be taken as spoils of war, so they covered it in clay. So the invasion took place. They didn't recognize the Buddha as being anything special, and they left, and the Buddha was left there. Many years later down the road, the Buddha, the clay, began to crack a little bit. And one of the monks at the monastery noticed that there was something glimmering in there. So they began to take some chisels and chisel away at that hardened clay, and what they revealed was the solid gold Buddha underneath. And that's very much like we are. We are this solid gold divine being covered by hard clay that sometimes we don't see into, right? So I have to chip away at that, and part of the way I do that is by claiming what is true. The true golden Buddha in there is the I am spirit that says, I am peace, I am joy, I am abundance, I am health. God is all of those things, so I am all of those things. Facts are kind of that clay on the outside that says, you need to look at it this way. Don't you see what's happening here? Don't you see this amount? Would have you focus on that. Myrtle Fillmore, one of the co-founders of Unity, said, never make an assertion, no matter how true it may look on the surface, that you do not want continued or reproduced. Do not do it. Truth gets our attention, not facts. I'm going to use an example here. Yes, I'm going to use an example here. Our beloved John Warner got a diagnosis recently. And when Laurel and I were talking about it, I said, whatever you do, when the doctor gives you that diagnosis, don't you say that word. Don't you say that word. Because there is a collective power in that word, that as soon as people hear that word, they go, oh. You know, it's almost an automatic, oh. Don't say that word. Call it something else. The doctor's going to come in and talk to you about Fred. Right? Don't make an assertion with something that you don't want continued. Don't hook into that. Step 4, give thanks. Jesus gave thanks before Lazarus was resurrected. Before he was resurrected, he was giving thanks. Giving thanks in advance indicates your belief, and it solidifies it. Quantum physics has a theory, we were talking about it in between services, it's part of the observer effect. That, you know, they did this double slit experiment that they shot particle beams through it, and when no one's watching it, they scatter randomly. But the minute that someone watched that happening, they begin to coalesce and form into something, oftentimes 2 straight lines. When we put our concentration, our vibration, our attention, and our focus on something, because remember, everything is just a malleable potential. And when we begin to focus on something, that malleable potential forms into what it is we're giving thought and vibration to. So when I determine that I'm going to stand in a place of peace in this relationship that's a problem, this relationship has been chaotic, but I'm going to be at peace. I'm going to choose to be at peace. Then everything begins to coalesce into that being the case. Now, I have a responsibility to do my part and make sure that when I engage in the relationship, I'm operating in peace. When I have decided that I want any material thing or circumstance or situation, quantum physics says you put your attention and your vibration on that thing and it begins to coalesce and it forms and it is there. It's been created. Now all you have to do is let it be and follow the things that open up, that lead you in that direction. But the minute I speak into that, oh, well, it doesn't look like it's going to happen, or I do something of that nature with it, it collapses. All of that potential just collapses. So giving thanks before we see something says, I believe in it that firmly. I know that firmly that I can already give thanks for it. Step 5, speak the word. It says he cried with a loud voice. He said, Lazarus, come forth. He didn't go, okay, I better not say this too loud in case this crew hears me and this doesn't work. Lazarus, come on out. Right? It wasn't that kind of a thing. He said with a loud voice. And a loud voice doesn't indicate that if we want something to happen, we pray louder. That's not what we're talking about. Louder prayers don't get any more attention than anything else, okay? The loud voice indicates confidence. I'm confident in this. I speak with confidence. So when I go to my eye doctor and they say, how are you going to pay for this surgery that you have coming up? I'm paying cash. Now, my surgery date's out in December. I'm paying cash. Quantum physics is lining that up to have that happen. I'm paying with cash, right? And I am so grateful and thankful that that's showing up. I don't have to make it happen. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to give any thought to it not being done. God, my surgery date is such and such date. I want the cash on that date. And I put my energy into that, right? Remember that prayers are not to impress God, they're to impress us. They're to raise our level of consciousness so that we can see above the problem. And then finally, step 6 is releasing. He said, unbind him and let him go. We can't stay bound up with a thing. We have to let it go. We have to release it and let it go. And that means we don't keep checking in on it. You ever put a seed in the ground to grow carrots? And a week after you plant that seed, you go out there and you start digging it up. Let's see what you're doing in there. Not too much going on. I'll cover you back up. 4 hours later that afternoon, well, let's see if there's any change. We're back out there uncovering it. And is with our prayers. We don't keep going to uncover and see what progress is being made. We just let it go. So in the event of a surgery that's coming up and I want cash for it, I'm not going to keep going to the mailbox or doing this or doing that, looking, okay, what kind of progress is being made? What kind of progress is being made? I'm just settling in and resting in the knowing. Settling in and resting in the knowing that it's taken care of, right? So prayer is this deliberate activity of recognizing our oneness with God. And when we can do that 24 hours a day, then our life becomes a living prayer. And our life begins to reflect that which we give our attention and our focus and our energy and our vibration and our thoughts to. A really great line to say when you don't know anything else to say is, God, here I am. Use me, live through me. Because if we're letting the Christ consciousness rule and we're letting that show up, everything out here, as Eric Butterworth told us in the book, In the Flow, that it becomes an out showing of everything that's going on internally. When we have those channels open, when we're just, here I am, God, live through me, then we're a clear, open channel, and all good begins to be reflected out here. Nice thought, huh? Yeah. Well, let's close our eyes for a moment. Take a couple of breaths. And we say this every Sunday, but let's really think about it this morning. There is only one presence. One. There is only one power. Only one. And that presence and that power is alive in me and in the entire universe. Whether the entire universe is aware of it or not, it's in charge of the entire universe. And that one presence and that one power is the energy and vibration of all goodness, all loving, which we call God. I don't have to do anything to manipulate it. I don't have to do anything to cause it to show up. It just is. And so I breathe into that, knowing that all is well in my world and all is well in the world. We say thank you, God, for all the good, for everything that shows up. Our prayer is just that we know how to be in every situation that arises in our life. Thank you, God. And so it is. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Very good. How you doing? Good. Well, we're getting ready to receive our offering today. I just want to say thank you for that. And I invite you just to get a feeling of prosperity and giving and great joy. And what do you think? Can you get that feeling inside? Just knowing that everything is taken care of, that I'm blessed, and so is everybody else, and so is the church. And the bills all get paid, and the lights stay on, and, and we take care of the yard, and we take care of, all the stuff that we need to do. And so let's just hold that thought within, that feel-good thought that I am blessed. I am blessed, and I'm so grateful for that. Let's say together, divine love flowing through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, all I receive, and all that I am. Thank you for your giving this morning.
The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well.